Hi, folks. In this video, I'm going to explore the philosophical themes in Cleo from 5 to 7 by looking at each character in turn and see what they contribute to the existentialism in the film. I've talked quite a bit about Cleo already. She goes on a critical transformation throughout this film, has a kind of existential awakening, and is the real heroine of the story. And I've talked about the way in which she is oppressed by gender norms throughout most of the film, and then fights back against them and resists the objectification of her, but becomes a subject and an agent. And that is precisely the mechanism through which she comes to grips with her own mortality and the meaning of her life and the ways in which she can create meaning and fight out of despair. So I'll talk in the end why to give the story away, think that she is actually a Beauvoirian hero. But I've said quite a bit about Cleo already. Let me treat each of the other characters in turn before we then get to finalizing what Cleo's journey is. Angèle, this is Cleo's caretaker, sort of her secretary and attaché, her manager, in a sense. This is the person who, throughout a lot of the film, is actually one of the key means or vehicles of oppressing Cleo. So Angèle, it's sort of an ironic name. She's not an angel at all. She's actually a devil. She's one of these people who is a real villain in the film. And we see that through the way in which she treats Cleo. She is part of the patriarchy that keeps Cleo deeply oppressed and keeps her in despair. So it's partly against Angèle that Cleo is going to have to fight if she is going to make her way in the world. I've talked about before the scene in the restaurant, in the cafe, where Angèle is infantilizing her. She is continually berating and demeaning Cleo. This is Angèle's thoughts. Oh, she needs to be looked after. She is a child. So here we see the dialogue making this theme explicit. And here in the hat shop, don't ask for trouble. She's saying, in a sense, obey society's norms. Don't rock the boat. Don't create a situation and create trouble. Another key thing about Angèle, you might have noticed that superstition is a deeply interesting theme to this film, because that also relates to the questions of meaning and fate and existentialism. Is there something supernatural out there? Or are there mysterious forces creating meaning in our lives or controlling our lives? Or does it all just not mean anything at all? So this raises the issues of nihilism and religion and the supernatural. It's an amazingly deep subplot and sub-theme to the movie. And Angèle hits this theme big time because she is deeply superstitious. And I don't think there's actually one simple-minded approach to superstition in the film, but I think we can see that superstition and relations to superstition can be deeply problematic by the way in which Angèle is a champion of it. It's superstition that is like, it creates these mysterious forces. Like, think about believing in the movement of the planets and astrology, how there are these forces out there that are controlling us, which we don't see and don't understand, but have profound influences on our lives and our fate. Well, I think in that sense, these superstitious forces are a symbol, a metaphor for social norms. They're often invisible norms. We don't realize that there are racial norms, gender norms, stereotypes, sexuality norms that are out there controlling us and shaping our lives, and many people are completely ignorant of it. And that we must obey these norms is basically a form of social construct. And so when Angèle says, like, you must obey these, because the norms come in sort of rules. Don't wear new clothes on a Tuesday. That's this superstitious rule of Angèle's. Well, the same could be said of a gendered stereotype, like, okay, women can't wear pants. You must put this skirt on and not go outside in pants, because women don't do that. Women aren't allowed to do that. You're going to be punished by whatever, bad luck in the superstitious world, or by social punishment, disapprobation in the social world. So I think there's a way in which superstitions actually function as this really interesting metaphor for social normativity and oftentimes social norms that can be oppressive in various ways, and could be forces of despair and oppression rather than fulfillment and authenticity and liberation. Okay, so that's the character of Angèle. Clearly an incredibly colorful and critical character to the trajectory of this film. Notice how many female characters get a central role here. Of course, the film was directed by Anya Verda. So we see there's actually uh, a way in which the filmmaking, the mechanisms of filmmaking were precisely those fighting against patriarchy. That is the theme of the fiction of the film too. So I'll talk about formal features of the film in another video, but it's just incredible how deep the formal features of this film go and how they intersect in such interesting ways with all of the philosophical themes. So another female interesting character is the cabbie. This is the total counterpoint to Angèle. And look, again, this directly raises the questions about mortality and existentialism and meaning, because Cleo can't believe that this woman is a cab driver, which says a lot about, patriarchal France in 1960. But it also, it's a period of revolution. There was a cultural revolution going on in France, just like in America at this time period. It was a critical time period. And the cabbie represents sort of the new woman, the woman who is willing to break against those social norms that Angèle can't, keeps Cleo in the chains of. And it's not like it's so easy when you can just decide to cast off the chains and now you're liberated and everything's going to go well from you. And we see that by the men coming by giving catcalls to the woman cab driver, in a sense, directly challenging her and attempting to punish her for being norm transgressing. But she blows it off. So she's, in a sense, she's a very tiny character in the film, but she's a point of strength. And all of these various, female characters give us a multifaceted picture of the construction of female identity. And that's why it's so critical that we're not just seeing one or two important and interesting female characters. So besides the cab driver, let me talk about a couple of the men before getting back to Dorothée, Cleo's friend. Jose, this is one of the key characters. This is Cleo's lover, and he's the married man. He's the man with a job and social standing, social capital. He's got money. He sort of keeps her as a plaything, as an affair, as a love affair, and it represents, he precisely stands in for a certain conception of constructed masculinity and what men mean. He has this thing like, okay, I know I can't stay with you. I'm busy. I swoop in to shower a few kisses on you, and then I swoop out again because I have important things to do. Like, there's this message, like, I've got to get to my meetings. Important men have meetings in life. This is what we learn about male stereotypes in the film. And look at the way in which he portrays women, and Cleo in particular. He says, you're strong, but your beauty is your health. It's all about, yeah, you're strong in a sense, but this is not praising and enabling her agency in a deep way. This is just another underhanded, ironical way of objectifying her by making her looks be the only dimension on which she can have any value. And, he says these disparaging things. There's always something the matter with you. Oh, there's always these issues. And that's the way in which she is an inferior social being than him and than men are. Cleo realizes this. And so we see these glimpses of the depth to her character, despite the fact that she is constrained by these norms in every facet of her life. And this is what really, I think, makes believable the transformation that she has in the middle of the film, and how she can have such an interesting character arc. So we see through her outward persona and the appearances that she does understand that he is oppressive, he is deeply problematic, and we see the the glimpses of her awakening that are going to come here. So some foreshadowing. So besides Jose, a couple of the other important male characters, Bob and Maurice, these are the characters who are the songwriters, the guys who barge in, being comical, being goofy, and again, not taking Cleo's woes seriously, precisely the way in which she feels in light of Jose, but by treating her again like a child, like she has to be cheered up and played with, the way in which a parent tries to trick the kid into eating their spinach by making it into a game, and they are mock treating her as if what she needs is being taken care of by them. The film is telling us actually what she precisely needs is the opposite. She needs to start taking care of herself, or she needs to be in leagues with men who are going to empower her to take care of herself as she can empower them. And so she can be in a mutual fight for liberation for herself and with others. And so, she sees this as well. Like, they deride my talents. They value her because she is the popular singer. I don't know. She's like the Taylor Swift of 1960 in France. But in many ways, she is like the way in which people want Taylor Swift to be, the disempowered person, the woman who actually can't, take care of herself and run her own business or make her own songs. So I guess looking at the contemporary American music industry would be a whole nother set of videos. So I won't get into the existential ramifications or feminist complications around analyzing Taylor Swift's career. Well, I'll stick with Cleo. Let me say that the music provides this really fascinating philosophical lens on the film, and that's why the role of Bob and Maurice is so critical. Because, as I said in one of the other videos, they literally provide the words. They are putting words into her mouth and are a way in which men fight to control and disempower Cleo. But also, we see glimpses of Cleo's inner state at a metaphorical or at a metafictional level through this song. And the way in which she then fights against the song becomes her fighting against patriarchy, because she is fighting against the men literally trying to stuff words into her mouth and make her conform to a certain conception of femininity. And this is precisely the climax. This is the moment of her awakening and her then fighting back. This is the key transformative moment, and it comes through the words of the song. So, and look at the photography here. It's just stunning. This complete black and white photography. I mean, it's hardly grayscale. It's painting things in deep black and white colors. I mean, look at this photograph down here where the piano is in black. I mean, and the bright lights behind the window. Her dress is entirely in white. I mean, look at the white objects here. The mise en scène. Look at the division, the vertical division between the dark and the white over here, and how then the foregrounded object here is black and the foregrounded objects over here are white. I mean, the photography of this is absolutely stunning, and it has to do with her, growth, her transformation, her stepping from one world into another world, her being subject and objectified to her then becoming a subject and becoming empowered for the first time. And we see this in this total transformation. We don't even realize she was wearing a wig, or maybe we when we see Angèle doing up her hair and stuff, maybe it's obvious it's a wig, but the way in which she is literally made a doll by these trappings of the wigs and hats and clothes. Well, here we see her dressing herself now, and she moves from white into black. She says, if only I could pull my head off too. So we see a kind of despair and almost a kind of a self-hatred, but it's not disempowering. It's not a form of despair and self-hatred that leads to bad faith and eschewing responsibility and becoming passive. Instead, it's the means, because she sees something better for herself and what she can be, that she fights back. And, she has these great lines of dialogue, like Angèle says, "Now, shall I come?" Like, you can't, she almost like, Angèle doesn't want to let her out of her sights, out of her clutches, her talons. She wants to keep her in her claws. And Cleo says, no, now she is fighting back. And I just think of this line from Alyosha and Dostoevsky. I mean, this is literally the moment where I always think of Alyosha's line, he fell to the earth, a weak youth, and rose up a fighter. This is where Cleo finally breaks down and falls to the earth, and then she comes back a fighter, and she's willing to box it out with Angèle and anybody else that she meets throughout the rest of the film. If this were a 1980s American film, they would be playing Eye of the Tiger here when she has this critical transformative experience. And again, look how this comes back to superstition and these hidden rules, and Angèle's hidden rules, like, damn Tuesday, I'll do as I like. Now she is assuming her own agency. And notice, it is not anybody else creating agency for her. That's why this is, I think, again, I'm sort of giving away the story. This is such a Beauvoirian film, because she is the vehicle to fight for her own and create her own agency. She takes on the demands of freedom and accepts that responsibility. Okay, so let's see. Look, some of these other key themes. She has these deep moments. Again, we see reflections and images, and her own self-awareness. Seeing herself now that she has gone through this moment of transformation, it's not completely done with, but she now has a deeper insight. She sees society's patriarchy for what it is and social normativity for what it is. She sees through it in many ways, in which she is continually looking through windows and mirrors and the reflections of her reality through glass and through mirrors. Even this interesting line about, you know, seeing her hat in a new way, and it seems ridiculous now. This is her total new perspective on something. Before, she saw hats as a way in which she was that it was a means for, it was a vehicle for her to live up to social norms of the way women should look and the way women should behave. Now she sees it as ridiculousness. Now she sees, again, this theme about her being a doll, but now she sees it in a totally different way. She has deep insight. And now she has a new journey throughout the rest of the film. And that journey is precisely what allows her to come to grips with her mortality and become an existential hero. Okay, I've been talking about Bob. Let me get back to the characters. I said I was going to go through all these folks. So I did Bob and Jose, two of the male characters. Dorothée is another one of these fascinating female characters who provides a counterpoint to Cleo. And Cleo encounters her as a point at which precisely where she needs friendship. And see, it's the struggle. This is why it's so Beauvoirian. It's not just Cleo's struggle alone, but Cleo meets Dorothée, her compatriot, who is fighting the same fight and is in her own way finding ways to break through or find the cracks in patriarchy and make her way in the world and become an empowered person. So she has a very different, she already has, in a sense, an emancipated conception and body image when she thinks she's the one, of course, who is posing nude for all the sculptors in that other example that I gave you of the constructions of female identity. Well, this shows she already is on the same journey Cleo is now on, of understanding herself in a new way. And again, we see this amazing metaphor for it. Driving is this wonderful metaphor for emancipation, for fighting back against patriarchal norms. Remember the cab driver. It was the woman who was taking over this traditional stereotypically male role as being the driver, because driving, of course, is a metaphor for agency and for autonomy. It's called the automobile, after all. It's power. Driving is power. It's horsepower. It's all of these things, especially like in America, the way in which cars are mythologized. We really see the way in which driving is a metaphor, is a symbolic, an existential metaphor for subjectivity here. And we see that the emancipated women are able to do it. Now let's talk about Raoul. I think, let me say, in one of the other videos, I think I misnamed Jose's as Raoul when I was talking about Cleo's oppressive lover. The character of Raoul, this is Dorothée's friend who is actually the one male character in the film who sort of gets it. He's like, he tells, I mean, what we get in the film is like, okay, there's a small group of men out there who are woke and who understand that women shouldn't be subjected to the norms of patriarchy and objectified in all of these ways. And we see this metaphorically because, of course, he's the one who was giving Dorothée his car. So on the metaphor, he is the person who metaphorically, symbolically supports the women's emancipation and the fight for equality because of his friendship. He's an actual friend of Dorothée, unlike all of the men who are surrounding Cleo in her life. He, of course, so there's so many metafictional moments in this film, but Raoul is a filmmaker who has made a movie within a movie. And of course, in this hyper, philosophical filmmaking period of the French New Wave, when there is a movie within a movie, your light bulbs must go off in your mind. You must start looking for some thematic connections. And in fact, we see Raoul's movie is a deep metaphor for Cleo's this whole film. So it's incredible. It reinforces all of these philosophical, existential and Beauvoirian themes. Let me say this as well. See these sunglasses? The way in which sunglasses perform a symbolic function, This is something that has a long history in film. I give you an example. There's another video posted in this module. It's a Slavoj Žižek commentary on a John Carpenter film called They Live. It's only 6 minutes long. I really ask you to watch it. I'm not claiming that the way the sunglasses function as a lens of ideology in this film is exactly like John Carpenter's use of it in 1988, but nonetheless, it shows you the ways in which thinking about vision and looking through glasses, looking through things that shape our perspectives, give us a way of talking about social norms, because it is a really amazing theme of this film, of Cleo's film, that we are shaped by social norms. And this is, I think, is what makes it such a powerful Beauvoirian piece. Because what is going on in Ralph? Oh, let me say, by the way, this is Jean-Luc Godard. So he was actually one of these filmmakers who was supportive and respected the work of Anya Varda and worked in her film for her, just like a lot of the French New Wave film makers made cameos and helped each other in their various films. So it's fascinating. This is the director of Breathless, who appeared in his own film and is here in Cleo as well. So go back and pay attention to this film within the film. There's so many things that are going on. It's all about black and white again. So it reinforces those themes. When I was showing you the mise en scène previously in Cleo's key moment of transformation, well, we see this completely reprised in this film, where we see two versions of events, the good and the bad. And we see the characters completely dressed in white and the characters completely dressed in black. So this is what we have in Cleo. But notice the inversion, because it was when Cleo was in white, when that was the bad world, and it's Cleo in black who is now fighting against it. And I think this shows, I think there's something deep and metaphorical here, that on one level, being black is being the villain, or that is being in despair. But actually it is through, because you are the outsider fighting against social norms. So there's a way in which you are breaking the law. You're breaking the social laws. But that is precisely what is called for when revolution is what is needed in order to fight against oppression. And that is the way in which she actually claws her way out of despair. So it is the white world of problematic social norms that is the realm of despair in the broader film Cleo. And we see this, what an inverse this is to the traditional story of black and white. And the film within the film presents that and helps us understand that sort of counterpoint. So we are precisely supposed to read and think about the connections between the two films. Let me also say, just to show you how explicit this is, the character in the white film here is a baby doll. It's literally, and if you see in which the way she's played, it's like a ragamuffin doll, like a total toy. So there, the woman is literally the doll, and we see this like on the writing of and everything. So this is precisely Cleo when she is in the first half of the film, when she is oppressed by the social norms and made into a thing, a doll. So this connects back precisely to those themes that I was talking about previously. And if you look at the film within the film, Raoul's film, it is the mechanism of sunglasses which allows us to see social normativity. And this tells us the sense in which these things are constructed, and interpretations of reality help build them. So it is not like understanding things in one way or another is value neutral. And this is what connects, and the sense in which social norms actually are conditioned by ideology. They reinforce ideology in unnoticed ways. And this is often how patriarchy or other forms of oppression operate. This is what I want you to connect to the Žižek commentary on They Live. So this is just another way in which sunglasses are used as a way to see through ideology. I encourage you to check it out just because it's fun and it connects with this theme about Raoul's film. Again, that is just one of the many things that is so deep and fascinating about this movie, because that is just a small little bit that maybe you ran over without thinking about it as you viewed it. And it connects with all of the themes throughout the whole film. Okay, let's get to the last character of Antoine, because this consummates Cleo's journey. This is who Cleo meets at the end of the film. The film is chronological, and and really finalizes her Beauvoirian triumph, in my opinion. The Antoine is a fascinating character because I don't know about you, but I felt like he was a bit of a creep when he meets Cleo in the garden by these waterfalls. You know, he starts hitting on her, and we get this first impression is a terrible one, at least for me, that okay, here's another guy who just thinks that he could call women as they're walking by in the street, or he has the right to start treating her as a beautiful woman who gets to be subjected to his advances because he's a man in society that feels empowered to do whatever he wants by his society. And I think it takes a lot of patience for me as a viewer to see Antoine in a totally different way, the way in which he actually can be somebody who supports Cleo and is a source of mutual acknowledgement with Cleo, and how he can support her battle and her fight for meaning and her liberation in the same way in which she provides a kind of support for him. Because he is as well going through a kind of existential crisis, or he is in a state of despair. He is fighting, he is in the army as a force of the colonial oppression of Algeria. And this is something that was really at the forefront of the French existentialist minds, Beauvoir and Sartre and Camus, and was very much a part of the French Cultural Revolution in the 60s, is coming to grips with their own country's colonialism and the dark history of that. And he is living that, and he is in despair and fighting to understand the meaning of mortality through that lens. And so it emerges through this that he actually needs Cleo's support. She can support him, and the way in which they both need something and can mutually support each other is what enables them to have a deep relationship. So I think when we first meet Antoine, it's really easy to be puzzled by the ending of the film. I always ask myself this question: why Antoine? How, in a sense, isn't this Cleo's journey? And we have seen her supported as an independent subject, a woman who can fight for her own emancipation and does not need a man to empower her. That is precisely what makes her such a Beauvoirian hero. So why is Antoine part of the story at all? That's the question I seemingly ask myself whenever I watch this. And I think there is actually a deep and subtle message here that makes the film even more Beauvoirian, because really, he is not looking for a fling for her. And this is not this romance where they end up in embrace and a kiss. This victory for her, she is the hero of the film, and her victory is not by finding marriage in him or falling into his arms like some cheesy romantic comedy in which that's what a female hero is capable of. Rather, what we get is mutual support, and he wants a kind of acknowledgement from her. He needs existential healing from her in a certain way, and he genuinely wants to provide that to her as well. So here we see what is so Beauvoirian about this is Beauvoir's concern with the other. And for Beauvoir, fighting for one's own freedom and supporting one's own freedom is concomitant, is essential to fight for the freedom and the openness of the futures of others as well. So it has to be interpersonal to be truly Beauvoirian. And it can be with Cleo's female friends, but here we see her actually helping somebody who needs help and is part of the forces of the other. He is at least a person who in many ways could embody traditional masculine stereotypes in society by being the male soldier. But he is the vulnerable male soldier, the male soldier who is willing to shed tears in the movie. He is somebody in need. And in many ways, this connects with the theme that patriarchy can be oppressive of men and stereotypical and deeply problematic ways of males as well. So what happens with Antoine and Cleo, so this is the final parts of the story, is they then come back to the Cleo's through line, the questions about her own death and whether she is cursed with cancer and whether she is going to die. Metaphorically speaking, of course, this is the question of whether or not she is going to live in despair, or whether or not she can find meaning in her lives. And what she learns is this dark cloud has been lifted over her. She does have cancer, you see, and that is what she has been fearing all along. So it seems like when Cleo is oppressed by society, or when she is disempowered by society, then the death sentence, then getting cancer is like a curse, and that is destruction to her. But now that she is transformed and she is empowered herself, then she can actually shrug it off. She actually gets the death sentence here. And maybe, but there's like the silver lining, like the doctor says, okay, maybe you're going to survive. Maybe chemotherapy is going to set things right. But she actually doesn't take it as a death sentence. So this is the way in which she can truly now face her mortality. It's not, it would have totally ruined the film if the ending was that she didn't have cancer. That's not this right Beauvoirian symbol, because really Beauvoir is a nihilist in some sense. It's atheism. It is, there is no ultimate meaning to the universe. We are just mortal and going to die. But she can now face it in the right way because she has been empowered. So the feminist aspects of the film connect with the existentialist aspects of the film. And that's what makes this such an amazing Beauvoirian film. And we get and the ending of the film, of course, is this deep look of mutual acknowledgement. This is the deep connection that these two characters have to each other. And it is not, you know, the man heroically saving the princess or something, or her needing a man in order to save her. This is two human subjects enabling and acknowledging each other and helping each other find meaning in the world. Okay, so what makes this film Beauvoirian? I guess I've sort of been talking about this and giving it away all along, so I won't dwell on this too long. I invite you to pause your videos here for a second and try to list all the ways in which it's Beauvoirian before I tell you a few of my own. Okay, that was your chance to pause your videos if you'd like. I've reinforced why I think this film is Beauvoirian so many times in this video and in the others. I think there's ways in which Cleo is oppressed by certain kinds of normativity, and this is precisely what Beauvoir was helping us see in her philosophical and her feminist and her existential works. And those norms precisely can be impediments to her freedom, and that's what oppression is, as Beauvoir defines it. And what we need to do in the face of oppression is we need to fight back against it. And that means both fighting for one's own freedom and fighting for the freedom of others. And that's why I think this character of Antoine actually adds a lot of interesting depth to the film. Of course, Beauvoir is really calling for revolution. And this connects with another theme with the formal features of the film. So I'm going to talk about revolution and superstition in another video. So I'll cut off here. Okay, thanks.